Hello and welcome to another episode of Transcontinental Overload. I'm Stephanie, your host, currently still on holiday in Europe, in England to be precise, and next week I'm heading back home to Austin. Today's guest is from England too, so it's kind of fitting that I'm here at the moment, although he isn't. But before I introduce him properly, I just wanted to say how much I love doing this podcast. As if I haven't mentioned that enough. I know I've been a bit gushy recently, but yeah, I just really enjoy doing it. And one of the reasons is that it gives me the opportunity to see how some people turn their expat experience into a career. And by that, I don't necessarily mean they're being sent by a company, but more that they create something, that they turn their experience into something else, using their observations and their experiences as a newcomer to another country, and then create something from it. So you might know from previous episodes, I've had expat life coaches, therapists, language teachers, other podcasters, YouTube presenters, and authors. One of them, Claire, is actually about to be a published author, so yay, Claire. I just love seeing what people do, and today's guest has also turned his experience into a career, but he's chosen something very different. It is my great pleasure to welcome British stand-up comedian Paul Taylor to my show. Paul is based in Paris, where he lives with his French wife and baby daughter. Paul moved to Paris initially in 2009, working for Apple, but after 9 years at the company, he quit to do stand-up comedy full-time. And since then, he has written and toured 2 bilingual stand-up shows. One is called Francophile, and the other one is called So British ou Presque. Francophile is available on YouTube. And the second show is still being toured at the moment. Paul was actually in the middle of doing that when the pandemic hit last year, and is now starting touring again. So if you're lucky enough to be in France or somewhere around there, then you might get a chance to see him live on stage. I'll put all the links in the show notes. Paul is the creator, writer, and star of the Canal Plus TV shows What the Fuck France, What's Up France, and Stereotype. He is also the co-creator and co-host of the Audible original series God Save My English. And he also does a happy hour live that you can watch on YouTube each week, and constantly adds to his repertoire. And yeah, I'm putting all the links in the show notes, so because they're just such a treasure trove. And if you're a French speaker, or maybe you're in a French-English or French-American relationship, then I can highly recommend his comedy. But enough introduction, here is Paul's story. I'm very excited to welcome a very special guest on my podcast today. I've had people on here before who've turned their expat experience into a career. Mm-hmm. I've had expat coaches, I've had language teachers, and even authors, people who've turned their experience into a story and they've written about it. And today's guest has made a different choice, using his expat experience for his career. But let's hear him tell us all about it. And welcome British stand-up comedian Paul Taylor. Or should I say Paul Taylor?
Paul Taylor.
Paul Taylor.
Paul Taylor.
Ah, bienvenue.
Merci beaucoup.
So, Paul, you are a Brit in Paris.
I am, yeah.
How did that happen? Why don't you tell us your story?
The origin story. It's like a Marvel film, the origins of Wolverine.
Wonderful.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I moved here in 2009. So 12 years ago. It's coming up 12. I think. Is it 12? What's 9? Yeah, it's 12.
Don't
It's just I feel like the last year has disappeared. So every time I was like, I've been in France for like 10 years, and now it's suddenly 12 all of a sudden.
Yeah, it's weird in this kind of weird loop. You've probably seen like timelines where people have tried to put the last year's or the last 2 years of timeline into perspective, and it's like,
Yeah, it's weird. Now I tell people, I was like, oh yeah, I did this. Like, you remember that gig that we did like 2 years ago? And they're like, Paul, that was 4 years ago. I'm like, oh, come on.
Yes.
So I came in 2009 is when I came.
Mhm.
And at the time, it was just after I graduated university. I studied French and Spanish at university. And I moved here with Apple. I used to work for Apple as a student in London at the Apple stores. And with that job, I also got to work in Canada for a year. I also got to work in Australia for a couple of months. And then my final sort of move with Apple was to France because they were opening up Apple stores in France. And I was one of the only people that had worked at Apple before. So every time Apple opens a new country, they bring people from existing Apple stores into that country. And the timing was perfect because I had just met, like 3 months previous, a French girl from Paris at university. And the timing was perfect where we both, I graduated my bachelor's degree. She was doing a master's in law. We finished that summer in 2009, and the Apple store opened in like October of 2009. So I came over. Yeah, it was great. And also like part of that move specifically was because I knew, because having moved to Australia with Apple, and I think this is probably the same with any country and any company that you're already working for and you go into a new sort of space, you see the potential of rising up the ranks and being able to get promotions and things like that. I'd seen that in Australia with a lot of Americans went from, when they opened up Australia as a country, Americans went over and very quickly got promotions to higher jobs within the company. And I thought, I knew I wasn't staying in Australia. So I thought, next time they open a new country that I speak a language of, then let's do it. So I did, the original plan was, I was like, okay, France or Spain. And it turned out France was the first country that they decided to open. So I did that. And then the plan worked out in the sense that within like 6 months, I then left the stores. So I was an employee of the Apple stores, and I kind of left and moved into a more corporate job of training. So I was a trainer. So I would basically be in charge of the training of new stores that would open up. And then I became the trainer of those trainers. And so sort of that was, so I spent 9 years at Apple altogether. And in the middle of that, started doing stand-up in France as a kind of side hobby. And now it's been 6 years that I quit my job at Apple, and I've been doing comedy full time.
Wow. Amazing. And I feel like I'm lucky to get a slot with you, because it sounds like you're starting to, go on stage again. All that is picking up again. So that must be wonderful. Yeah,
it's cool. Like we've had a year of kind of unknown. Well, my second stand-up show was in the middle of touring when the pandemic hit. So I had a brief spell back in October, in September and October of last year when the theaters reopened for a bit. And then they closed again. And so we're just starting the tour is kicking back in, but I'm also getting back on stage on like smaller gigs where I'm doing 10 minutes with a bunch of other comedians. So that's really cool. Yeah, it's really good to get back on
quite
stage.
Nice to ease you back in as well, because it kind of feels weird to be out again and be with people again, isn't it? It's,
well, especially when you go from being on stage in front of hundreds and sometimes thousands of people to then just being in front of your camera in your studio, just being like, "Hi everyone, do you still like me? Am I still funny?" So
I can't even imagine.
But
let's go back to so you moving to France, and you said you studied French at university, but that wasn't your first time in France, was it?
No, I lived in France as a kid. So when I was 2 years old, my dad got a job in Geneva, and we moved across to Geneva for a couple of years, and then for a few more years after that, we moved across the border to France. So basically, from the age of 2 to 9, I wasn't in the UK. And for a couple of those years, I went to a French school. A couple more, I was at an international school in Geneva. Okay. So it was kind of a mixture of different schools that I was at. And because when I speak French, I don't sound English. I have a French accent when I speak French. So the biggest problem slash advantage that I have in France is that I sound French. And so it's very good for a lot of things, but then it's also certain times it's like a disadvantage because people think I'm French and I'm not.
I love that. I love that in your show, Franglais.
Yeah.
It's so vivid how you describe people's reactions.
Yeah, if you type in Paul Taylor French but stupid into YouTube, you'll find because the whole concept of that joke, that bit, that sketch is that French people think I'm French but stupid because I sound French, but then I make basic mistakes in French because, you know, as a German speaker, it's even more complicated than French. So you can imagine somebody speaking German with a perfect German accent, but doing basic mistakes that no German would make.
Yeah, the wrong gender and things like that. And
exactly.
But so, I just love that when you describe how your so your wife, are you married, right? Or
it's the same. It's been the same girl since we met in London. She has a harder time justifying it than I do, because obviously she doesn't want to be the person that's with a moron. Whereas I'm happy being a moron. I don't care. Like I'm just like I play with it sometimes, but she sometimes gets more embarrassed than I do, so she justifies it more than I do.
That's.
But that was going back to saying that so my accent comes from when I was a kid. My capability of reproducing different accents, because when I speak Spanish, if I were to now, I don't sound Spanish, but I used to sound Spanish because now I sound French when I speak Spanish because I'm so in the French culture. But yeah, when you're a kid, like my mum's Irish, my dad's from the north of England. I went to an international school with Americans. I lived in a French speaking country, so I had all these accents going on in my brain when I was a kid. So I think I'm just I have more. I'm able to reproduce accents better than a lot of people just through that experience. My wife thinks I have a gift with accents, but I'm like, it's not a gift. It came through the exposure as a kid. So my accent comes from when I was a kid, but the content, the grammar, the vocabulary comes from the 12 years of living here now, but also because I studied French. I started studying French from when I was 5 years old, basically, when I was at French school. Yeah. Then through international school. Then when I moved back to England, I was learning French as you do in England, went all the way through to university. So I tell people when they say, how was your French so good? I'm like, I've been studying it for 27 years. Like I you know, same thing with you. I imagine it with English,
it's
right?
Second nature. Exactly. Although I didn't spend that much time in the UK as a kid, I came to study and I just spent a few summers, but it's that same sort of thing. You just soak it all up. And because when you get taught in your own country, that your teachers are never that good. So in Germany, and this was an interesting thing also, because you mentioned this about French schools teaching English and how crap it is, and how the kids don't like it when someone is really good at it. So it's like when you have, and I had that same experience, and that really resonated with me, because it's like I had a teacher who really encouraged me to use, you know, a British accent and all that. And I was mocked so much by my classmates. They were like, "Oh, he's trying to be special," and it's much cooler to just speak English badly.
A little bit, yeah. Well, and the thing is, in France, that bleeds into adulthood as well. Which I feel it doesn't necessarily in English speaking countries. You know, if you speak really good French or really good Spanish, in England, people they admire you. They're like, wow, that's great. Like, how did you do that? Like, that's unbelievable. Yes. As a kid, everyone makes fun of everyone. But like as an adult, and in France, as an adult, you get made fun of if you speak good English. And this is like part of my theory of why the French don't speak good English, is because they're all too worried about, it's not that they're worried. Yeah, exactly.
in a weird way.
Yeah, they judge each other. Did you ever spend time in Australia?
No, but you know what happened? I moved to the States. I always get asked if I'm Australian, but
interesting.
The good thing is my husband, who is from Kent, always gets asked if he's Australian too. And so we've lived in the States for 11 years now. And I think with me, what happened is I just, because I'm not a native speaker, I just kind of, I still sound mostly British, but now I've adopted the whatever's around me, and then it gets softened. Whereas he, to me, still sounds the way he always does.
Yeah, I'm sure he does, but I get that all the time.
And Americans are not so. I think I always like to think they only know Downton Abbey. The
they've got two references in the US. They've got Downton Abbey. exactly. It's the two opposites. It's either Guy Ritchie film or James Bond. They're the two films, and that's all the thing. So yeah, like I get the same thing. I again, in my first stand-up show that's available on YouTube, I do a whole thing about going to a Starbucks in the US where the and this is a true story, where the woman thought I was Australian, and I was like, no. And then she's like, and I was like, I'll give you another guess. And she said South Africa. And I was like, what? No, it's like nothing. I don't understand. So yeah, I think the sort of standard Southeastern English accent, which your husband, because I'm from Kent as well. So we probably sound very similar. He like they're not used to that accent, but yeah, it might be the British accent mixed with a bit of an American in your voice. There's definitely an Australian twang in there.
Definitely. And I think that's how it comes out. And then because I lived in Kent, because I have this also, there is that history where the prisoners, right, from like the Cockney, East London, Southeast, they got shipped off to Australia. So obviously there's a connection with that accent, and you can hear it. And when I first moved to the UK, I thought, oh, that sounds very, very Australian, because equally as a German, not having lived in the UK before, I knew my British English from my teachers and from the BBC. And so that's not really what people sound like.
Welcome to the BBC.
And then the estuary English and all that loveliness was all new to me. I get the South African, and that's where I think my German accent comes through. Because
I can
South Africans
hear that,
to me sound slightly Germanic, and that's the Afrikaans, and I mean, being a language nerd, it's like it fascinates me, and I can talk about that kind of stuff.
Well, I always make fun of Americans. I make fun of French people that they're unable to understand different accents because they're just not used to them. Like in the UK, I'd say in the English speaking world, we're better at understanding and picking up on accents than any other English speaking country. Maybe Australia and New Zealand, maybe the Commonwealth, but definitely the US and France is the same. Like they've got no idea. They can't hear different accents. They just can't hear them. And it's not their fault. It's just a fact. It's just like you haven't been exposed to as many accents as we in Britain have.
Absolutely.
When we're watching the news, we have people from Newcastle on the news. We have Scottish people. We've got Northern Ireland in there. We've got the Republic. We've got Wales, the nations themselves. But then within England, Liverpool and Manchester, who are like 30 minutes away, they sound completely different. Yeah. So we've just been more exposed at growing up to different accents. So we're better at recognizing different accents. So we find it weird when Americans are like, oh my God, are you Australian? And we find that stupid, but I understand it from the American point of view. It's like they've only seen like 3 things in British English, so it's very difficult if you haven't been exposed.
When it's like, oh, say this with a British accent, and you're like, there is no British accent.
Yeah, that drives me nuts. Really. There's 2 things that drives me nuts. One is the British. Oh my God, I love your British accent. I'm like, okay, British from where? Because Northern Ireland is Britain. The other one that because I do a lot of voiceover work in France, because I'm one of like 10.
You're the voice.
I'm one of 10 English speakers that do most of the people that do voiceovers in English in France, I know them. They're friends of mine. We're all comedians. But they often are like advertise, like they'll say, oh yeah, the French people work for global clients, and they're like, oh, we need an English voiceover for the French company Decathlon, which is like a clothing sports store, that they have stores everywhere. And so I'm like, cool. So I do the voiceover, and they're like, can you do that again, but less English? And I'm like, so you want it to be more American? And they're like, no, not American, but just less English. I'm like, you need to choose a country, because I can do an American accent or I can do an English accent. And like, but it's somewhere in the middle. I'm like, that doesn't exist. And then there is an accent that professional English voiceover people will know, and it's called the Mid-Atlantic accent. And I always joke, I'm like, no one lives in the ocean except for Poseidon, and he's Greek. So that doesn't work. But there's an accent which is like old American in like old American films that sounds a little bit British, but it's still American. And I'm just like, just choose one of the countries. Yeah, shut up.
That's what I'm aiming for.
The Mid-Atlantic. Yeah. Where do you live? You live on a boat in the middle of both countries?
That's it.
Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah. But also that's an explanation. The whole people don't understand you if you're too extreme. This is I've noticed that here, and especially here now. I'm in Texas now, so we started off in California.
Wow,
and
yeah.
we're in Texas. So when I moved here, for me it was one American accent. I could maybe say, that's probably New York, and that might be a Southern accent. That was the degree to which I had been exposed to, and I was like, okay, I can probably tell those apart, but don't quiz me on it. And that's changed now. But I go through this phase when I go back to the UK and I see my friends. I'm probably a little bit mid-Atlantic to start with. And then they were like, oh, and you know what Brits are like. They just, they will pick up on it straight away.
Yeah, for sure.
It is, what do you sound like? And I'm like,
and that's probably why I changed accents subconsciously, is just because when I was at school in the UK, I was always getting made fun of because I moved around within the UK as a kid as well. So every time I started a new school, people would make fun of me. So I think subconsciously I kind of changed my accent. I wasn't sitting down studying the phonetic alphabet going, I need to make this sound more than that. It just happened naturally. The same thing when I moved to Australia for a couple of months. I was only there for 4 months, but I could clearly tell that when my natural way of saying bottle, if I'm speaking quickly, I'll just say a bottle. I'll do the glottal stop and get rid of the T's. If I'm speaking properly, I'll say bottle. But I clearly remember when I was in Australia, it turned into D's. I'd be like a bottle because it just came out. So it's like a mix of my normal English accent and an Australian accent, not to be pretentious. It just happened, where I'd be like, oh, can I get a bottle of water? And earlier on when you said the word, because I said, have you been to Australia or something like that? And you said the classic for me is when Australians say don't, they go like don't, it goes up in a little thing. So accents are fascinating.
But I do think you have to have a certain, you're reluctant to call it a talent or a gift, but I think there is something. Some people are more musical. That's what I've been told, in the way they hear things, and then it's easier for them to adopt other accents. Because there are some expats who've lived in a country for 20 years and they still sound.
But they've probably arrived there later. That's the thing. That's the.
Well,
do you know what I mean? I think for me, the thing with accents, I don't, because there's no reason why genetically I'd have a talent for voice. Neither of my parents are musicians. There's nothing musical, or so for me it's just being exposed to it as a kid. And the theory for me stands true when the reason why French, Spanish, and Italians have such strong accents when they speak English is all their stuff is dubbed, right? When they're kids, they watch films and cartoons and TV shows that are all Germans dubbed too. Into their own language. Yeah, but there's something. My biggest
bugbear.
But there's something weird with Germany where you guys have because if you take the whole of Scandinavia, none of them dub stuff. It's all subtitled. So they're exposed to the accents very young and they're able to reproduce those accents. So I don't know what the magic is with Germany. Maybe because the languages are similar or the accents are a little bit similar. I don't know.
Maybe it's not as strong. The sounds are not as different.
Yeah, I think that's
and
what
I think it is. with the Romance languages, it's different. They have more sounds that don't exist in English, or I don't know.
Well, you say Romance, but even Portuguese people speak better English than anyone else in the Romance world because they don't dub either. Everything's subtitled. Yeah. And so they're more exposed.
Just shows how much you actually soak up when you're a child, how much you absorb from your environment, and how your surroundings really shape you even at a young age. And with you, it's obviously lasted despite the years of being back in Britain. And then you fell in love with a French girl and moved there. So full circle.
Sounds like like everyone that I've ever met who's an expat is like, I came here for a week, I met somebody, and then I've been here for 25 years. And you're like,
that's how it happens. So at what point did you decide, you said you did the comedy as a hobby, but how did that come about? Because, how do you think there's something here, because I mean we're all like, we're observing the cultural differences and all this kind of thing. At what point did you think, okay, I can do something with this?
Well, it wasn't even related to the cultural differences, really. I wasn't even thinking about it like that. It was more just something that I think when I was a late teenager in the UK, like I was enjoying stand up. It was a thing, and there was something about watching DVDs of comedians in front.
And there are plenty.
Yeah, like recorded at like the O2 Arena in London or Wembley or these massive arenas, and there was just something that attracted me to that feeling of maybe being on stage with people like cheering or laughing or whatever. It hit something inside of me. And so when I was my last year of university, I typed into Google, how do you become there was a comedy gig that happened at the pub at university. And there was a couple of comedians. One did really well. The other ones didn't do so well. And that kind of reinforced my thing of like, oh, okay, like these guys didn't do very well, but they're doing this as their job. Like maybe there's something to do here. So then I Googled like how to become a comedian, found that you had to go to, like, it starts at open mic nights. Like that's where everyone starts. So I typed in, to Google open mic nights in London. I went to a bunch as a audience member. And then one of the ones as I went to as an audience member, some guy pulled out during the show, and my best friend was with me, and he was like, why don't you ask the MC if you can do 5 minutes? And I didn't want to, and he asked for me, and he gave me 5 minutes. So that was kind of like the first time that I went on stage. Didn't go very well, as most comedians, when they start out, it doesn't. But it didn't go badly enough that I was like, oh, this is, I mean, even though it went badly, I was just like, oh, I can improve it. I can make it better. So I did.
Enjoyed it.
I don't know if I enjoyed it. There was something about it that I enjoyed. It wasn't a great, like, no one was really laughing. I think people were just listening to me. So I did 8 gigs in London before I moved to Paris, 8 or 9, I can't remember. And then when I moved to Paris, my job took over and I didn't do anything for 3 years, basically, because I was too busy doing my normal job. And then a bunch of different things happened in my life where I was just questioning I had like a quarter life crisis, basically, at 25. And I was just like, yeah, I don't know, I don't know what's going on here. Like, I don't know what I'm doing with my life. Like I really enjoy my job, but I could be here until I'm 65 and then I'll just retire and then I'm dead. So I was just like, maybe like I don't want to regret not having tried doing comedy. So then I just started getting back on stage in 2013 in Paris, in English and in French. Different nights were in English, different nights were in French. And then I was doing that for a while, as well as still working for Apple and kind of traveling around. The advantage was I was able to go to different open mic nights in the US, because I was there quite often in California at the headquarters. And then I went to China a couple of times, Hong Kong, just a bunch of different places where I was able to do some open mics in English. And then basically like 2.5 years later, it was like the full-on crisis of what's going on in my life. And a couple of months later, I decided to quit my job at Apple and do comedy full-time. And that was in May 2015.
Wow, that's a huge step to take.
Yeah.
So you just felt like you had to give it a go.
Yeah.
And then, but first you kept it separate to start with, right? So English and French stand-up routines.
Yeah. Like
when did you think, oh, this could actually work together, using both languages in one show?
Yeah, it was. I mean, in Paris already, in Paris and in France, like stand-up really isn't a big thing. And so there was only like one night in English or 2 nights in English. And most of the stuff that was going on was in French. So it's kind of like I had to do it in French. But there were no crossover nights. So I'd be, and all these nights are just, with other comedians, there's 5 of us, we're doing 10 minutes each. That kind of stuff. And so it was going well. Like the 10 minutes were going well. I found like a thing that was working well for those 10 minutes in both languages by the end of sort of the 2.5 years. And the only way to progress in France, it's not as robust. The infrastructure isn't, there are no comedy clubs in France. It's all theaters basically, or you play in like pubs. So the only way to kind of evolve is to build a 1-hour show straight away and then do that in Paris or on tour or wherever. So when I was thinking about what do I do with my show, do I do a full show in English? Do I do a full show in French? And then there's two separate shows like one of my friends had done before me. And then I had the idea of doing one show in both languages, partly because I didn't have an hour in English and I didn't have an hour in French. And
that's
some of the
lot
jokes,
of material anyway, for like an hour to fill an hour. That's
yeah. And a lot of the jokes, I realized you kind of needed both languages to understand some of the jokes. So I was like, all right, let me do a thing in both languages. Contrary to everyone else's opinion, they were like, yeah, French people don't speak enough English. It's going to be shit. There's not going to be, no one's going to come. It's going to be crap. And I was just like, maybe, but the only way to try it is to try it. You know, the only way to find out is to try it. And I tried it, and it was just kind of right place, right time. But at the same time that I launched that first show, I was also contacted by a TV company here called Canal Plus, which is the equivalent of HBO in the US, where you pay. It's a paid it's not one of the free channels. You have to pay to have the content. So it's HBO in the US, Sky TV in the UK. Because I had put out a video, which is like one of my headlining bits. It's like at the time it was a 3-minute video around the fact in France how they say hello, how they kiss each other to say hello. You know, sometimes it's 2, 3, 4, etc. So I did a video about that, which was part of my staged thing, but we filmed it in a way that wasn't me on stage with a real audience. It was like me talking to the camera in one tracking shot with no cuts. So it kind of felt like stand-up because I was talking to the audience, talking straight down the camera, being like, hey, France, I've been here for a couple of years, don't understand what's going on. And Canal Plus, they saw that. And this was all within a 2-week period. I launched my stand-up show. This video comes out. Canal Plus gets in touch saying, we like you as a person, as an English person, doesn't understand France. Let's work together. And we, with Canal Plus, we ended up making a mini series based on that first video.
Amazing.
The mini series was called What the Fuck France, which is hilarious because it's a TV show and it's called What the Fuck France. And you can do that in France because it's English. They don't care what you say in English. They don't care. None of the song, like a friend of mine makes a joke about there's a song by Lily Allen and the title of the song is Fuck You, right?
Yeah.
And it would be playing in the supermarket in France, and she's got her like 3-year-old son, and she's hearing fuck you very, very much. And she's like, what is this country? But I get it. It's not French, so you can do what you want. So anyway, we made that mini series and that was all in English. It was the first mini TV series in English with subtitles in French, like that wasn't dubbed. And that was really successful on YouTube because they put the 3-minute sketches basically on a YouTube channel. That took off at the same time as my stand-up show was going on. So the stand-up show was very successful because of this TV show. It just is supporting it, like, you know.
Exactly. That was, amazing. So and also great preparation for COVID times to have done something like just the camera.
It was. So that, I mean, without knowing it, it kind of prepared me for doing stuff not in front of a live audience. So the show lasted for a year. And the stand-up show was great, and then the stand-up show lasted for 3 years by the time I toured all the places, and my audience came to me very quickly, so that was really cool. Like, I don't know if I had have not had that show on TV and YouTube, how well would the stand-up show have worked? You know, I think it still would have done all right because it was a concept that had never been done in France before, doing a show in both languages. So it would have eventually maybe found its audience, but definitely not as quickly. Both languages worked out really well. And then when I finished the first show, it was recorded and it was broadcast on TV. I was thinking about my second show. What do I do? Do I do the same thing in both languages? Do I only do French? Do I only do English? What do I do? And the consensus from my audience was like, no, do like this. It's your thing to do a thing in both languages. So stick to that. Just do it again in both languages. So my second show is more in French than it is in English. It's not 50-50, but there's still some English in there.
Yeah. I mean, it's when I first saw it, and I can't even remember how I found you. It was kind of also probably one of the smaller sketches, and then I watched the whole show, and that's at first I thought you were French, and then you know that I think the first bit I thought was I saw was in French, and then when you switched to English, I'm like, oh, okay. So and then I started looking into it, and then I thought exactly that. It's like, how is that going to work with an audience in France? I mean,
there's a lot of comments on the YouTube video who are like, where is this being performed at? Like, how do the audience understand what he's saying?
Yeah, but at the same time, it's just so wonderful because it's so unique, and because also, like you said earlier, that comedy is not a French thing. The stand-up comedy is not, or it's starting to, but there's not that much. Whereas it's been part of British culture for a long time.
Yeah,
and it's similarly to Germany too. And it's like when I left Germany, there was nothing, and what was there wasn't. It was very kind of political satire was a thing, and that was done very well, but there wasn't much else. And now over the last, I want to say 5 years, it's like a whole new genre is emerging, and I think it's all because people are more exposed to things like your shows.
Well, it's thanks to two things. It's one, it's thanks to social media, but it's also thanks to Netflix, who who if all the best stand-up comedians have got their Netflix special, because Netflix is around the world. Like there was a clear difference. Netflix arrived in France in 2017. I don't know what year, but I clearly saw a difference of the type when I first started doing comedy here, in like small clubs and stuff like that. I'd arrive. First of all, it would be like the first floor of a restaurant. Like, and by first floor, I mean the second floor in America, right? Like the not the ground floor, not floor 1, 2. Anyway, the upstairs of a restaurant, and we would show up, and I was the only one who would perform with a microphone. It was rare at the time for everyone would perform very theatrically, without a microphone. You'd be on the stage. I mean, obviously if they're performing in massive theaters, but in these small clubs, in these small bars, restaurants, the basement of a bar, you don't really need a microphone, to be honest. It's just, you're just projecting your voice, but it's very theatrical. The fact that having a microphone in your hand, it just gives a different vibe. And so it was always weird for me that no one else was using microphones. It just, and some places didn't even have microphones. So that's how I started. And now it's the opposite. Now you're weird if you don't use a microphone. And that really has changed with Netflix and the exposure, especially with subtitles, right? Yes. Because everyone, even at the time, like before Netflix, you wouldn't have American stand-up comedians on French TV because they wouldn't dub them, because that would be stupid to dub stand-up. And then French TV just wouldn't do subtitles. So they would just never, unless you were a massive comedy fan and you downloaded illegally, Chris Rock or Dave Chappelle or some of these massive American comedians, you wouldn't know what it was. And now, thanks to that exposure, people are getting used to the fact that, hey, you can be on stage with a microphone, the person's going to talk to you and you can respond. Like, that's the thing. It's not just theater where you go and watch and you sit in silence and you're very respectful to the show that's happening on stage.
It's very different. Yeah. No, I love subtitles. I always have. And it's like when just thinking back to when I learned foreign languages, I wish we'd had a lot more on the subtitles, because like I said, Germany as well, dubbing everything, and they would probably even dub comedy. I mean, honestly, it was that bad. And to me, it's like this being able to watch all these things, or sometimes even if you speak the language, but you're not completely fluent, and you can just put the foreign language subtitles on. You have all those choices, and then you can listen and read the subtitles, and that helps so much. And so I kind of feel language learning is changing through all that. I think so.
It's good. I've found through my experience now recently with what I'm doing on YouTube, which is like a live podcast. So it's basically like this, but there's a live audience at the same time. They can ask their questions. And every week I have a different guest. Like tonight, I'm doing one at 8 p.m. with a French comedian. And some of the shows are in English, some of them are in French, depending on the guests. But the thing that I wanted to do was at least have subtitles in the opposite language. So if it's a French guest, I want English subtitles. If it's a French guest, I want English subtitle. No, did I say that? Whatever. You know what I mean? The different thing, but it's so expensive. Like I have to, because I don't have time to subtitle an hour and 15-minute podcast into the opposite language. And I can't do it in French. My French is great, but it's not good enough to write subtitles.
It takes
so I'm paying
ages.
That's the thing. It's a very long process. And especially like with a film, it's less long than it is like my podcast, because we're speaking for an hour and 15, whereas in a film, you've got moments where there are no dialogue. It's just like, montage shots, or it's like, and the dialogue is a lot less than it is just us speaking. So subtitle is huge. And I still have people complain at me because they're like, hey, Paul, like I'm learning French. I would really love French subtitles when the person's speaking French. I'm like, yeah, dude, I don't have the money. Like it's already costing me like €1,000 a month to pay a guy to subtitle it. Like it's too much, if eventually the stuff is watched by 1 million people, I might have the money to pay somebody. Exactly. Yeah. My goal is to have enough money to pay somebody to subtitle both bits,
and because also with this kind of thing, you can't get you can get auto-generated subtitles sometimes, right? There's this sort of thing sometimes that you see but you can't do that with comedy because it's terrible. There's no way that the automatic translation will do that well enough for it to work, because then you lose if that's not done well.
It's like, just comedy is really difficult to translate, even just normal stuff. Like I remember when I was at university, I did a whole sort of research thing on dubbing, and it's kind of the same thing, whereas like I was talking about the series Friends, and at some point in Friends, who is it who has an English girlfriend? Somebody gets an English.
Oh yeah, we should know all this because the reunion, that's all just happened.
Yeah, I think it was Ross. Ross had an English girlfriend at some point. Whatever the thing was, somebody had an English girlfriend, and in the series, like the 6 Americans are making fun of this English person because of the way they speak, because of cultural references, whatever. And I was like, what do they say in France? Like, are they making fun of an English person, or are they making fun of a Quebecois or a Belgian person? Like, how do they keep those jokes, which are so American and British? So how do they translate that into French? And it lost a lot of its value from the dubbing.
It does. This happens in literature too. And this was one of my, so when I was studying it and all that, it was the biggest, like, how do you do that? How do you translate like the cultural jokes and the plays on words that just it loses everything. So I would always say to people, if you can, read it in the original. And watch the movie in the original, and just regard the subtitles as an explanation, but sometimes it doesn't make sense because you can't, and it's a real art. And I think there's a lot more done about that now. I think looking back on like older films, some of them are just so badly subtitled.
Well, I've noticed with stand-up, the people that with Netflix, each production company that produces the stand-up show is responsible for the subtitles. It's not like Netflix have their translators or whatever. And so there's a bunch, like I sometimes for a laugh watch like these stand-up comedy shows with French subtitles to see how they translate them. Sometimes they do a really great job of finding another joke that's similar, but there's nothing to do with the English joke, but it's close enough that they're using a different.
You can do that. Yes. I was told I did for a while, I did simultaneous interpreting kind of thing. I had these visions of myself being in the UN. EU and or the U. I was going to say EU, but the UN, yes, absolutely. And they said to us, there's some things, like some tricks of the trade that you do, where sometimes when a speaker is like telling a joke, and you as you have to translate right there and then. And sometimes there's just no point because it's not translatable. So what you should do is just tell your audience, tell them the speaker's telling a joke, and I'll tell you when to laugh. And then basically getting around that and just saying, funny. Okay, the joke is about apples, that it doesn't make sense. Laugh now.
That's amazing.
I've always remembered that, and it's great, but it's also such a shame sometimes. And it's but not everyone can speak every language and understand all the cultures. And
well, that's why there are not very many worldwide comedians that are known well, compared to actors or musicians. If you're listening to Coldplay, and if you're in Japan, you just translate lyrics and then you go, oh, this means a lot, like, oh cool, I resonate with this with the song. But music can be worldwide. Comedy, it's very rare that comedy's worldwide.
There's that awareness is there now, I think. And just like I said, in Germany, there's a scene it's
Mm-hmm.
emerging, and I love it. And you have comedians like Eddie Izzard, for example,
Yep.
and she is he goes by she
yeah,
now.
she was I think she was very from what I read on BBC News, and that's kind of the only news that I follow anymore. Anyway, on BBC,
Yeah.
she said she I don't know if the term is coming out because she's been out like as transgender, or at the time it was transvestite, because he was dressing up as a woman doing his stand-up shows, and now she has said that she would like to be called she.
Yes.
Yeah. So
I know she was performing in German, or she has been performing in German as well, and French, I think too. I'm not too sure what.
Yeah, she does French, German, and at some point, I know she was in France. I think it was for the anniversary of the landings on the beaches for the war. I think it was something like that. And she did a show. She did like the show at like, I don't know, 7 p.m. in English, 8 p.m. in French, 9 p.m. in German. So it was like 3 back-to-back shows in 3 different languages. So that's super impressive.
Yes.
But even though she's managed to do stuff kind of internationally, it's still not really international. She's still playing for the people in those languages. Like, when I went to see her with my wife, I think it was in 2014, at a theater in Paris that I ended up filming my first stand-up special act because I thought it was really cool. She was performing in French, but kind of broken French, because, you know, her French is like an English person's French, right? But the people in the room, the majority of people in the room were English expats, or they were people from like the showbiz industry in France, because they were like, oh, there's this English comedian coming through that's performing in French, let's go see her. And so it was on the surface of things, it's international. Like, on the surface of things, I'm an international comedian. I'm able to perform in Australia, in China, in Hong Kong, in a bunch of these countries. And people are like, wow, like, this is amazing. I'm like, it's cool. I mean, it's unbelievably amazing, but I'm still only performing for French expats in those countries. I'm not performing in China for Chinese people, or in Australia for Australians. I'm really performing for expats, because, I mean, the Australian people that were at my show in Australia are people who are married to or going out with French people, so they understand a bit of French. So I'm still of the opinion that, you know, comedy is a very local thing, and not it some stuff, as we were talking about, Eddie Izzard can translate some of her stuff into French, and it works fine because it's so absurd and so what's the word? Absurd isn't the word. Absurde is the French word. It's so there's a word in English that we use for comedy that is not sort of like, hey, I was at the supermarket and this happened. It abstract. It kind of like abstract humor. So some of her sketches can work in other languages when they're translated.
Yeah, and that's what she does, and people who are performing the same show and then take it into several languages. But yours is different because you use the fact that you do both. It's like that's your thing.
Yeah.
And so it's not like you separate them, and that's why it works. But like you said, it is for people with a French connection.
Yeah, I mean, the show is for French people. It's a show for French people. It just so happens that those French people speak English or understand English, because the show should, I mean, in reality, the first show was more kind of worked for both, like it worked in both languages, but you still needed to understand French to make it happen. So yeah, you know what, it has its advantages and it has its disadvantages. The advantage that I found through doing a show in both languages is I was able to find my audience quicker than a lot of French comedians who are just doing stuff in French and talking about French stuff in French for French people. So I was able to find a niche and find my audience a lot quicker than they have. The disadvantage is that long term, that strategy won't ever be as popular or as room filling as some of my colleagues who right now they're performing in smaller rooms than I am, because I've found my audience. But in 10, 15 years, they could be selling out, stadiums, because it's in French for French people about France, right? So that's kind of the downside, is that it's never going to reach there's a glass ceiling to doing bilingual comedy.
Yes, I can absolutely see that. Although I feel like you're not going to run out of material. And this, which kind of takes me to talking about your second show? Because I feel like you mentioned earlier that your second show is the so British ou presque.
So British ou presque, exactly. Yeah.
And so that was the one that you were in the middle of performing, and then the pandemic hit, and so you had to put that on ice, and you're starting out with that one again. And you mentioned earlier that one is much more about your identity. So the first one was about language and just a general kind of French English misunderstandings and all that kind of stuff. And so now you're more into, or more talking about identity and what it means to be British in France, and then also about being a dad. And I kind of feel like that in itself will provide you with so much material over the next 18 years.
Exactly.
And
that's the downside, not the downside, but the thing is, like, I didn't want the second show to just be about being a dad, because it could be like, now that she's 2, my daughter, there's so much stuff I could, like, it just could be dad jokes, like jokes about being parents, the difficulties about being a parent and that kind of stuff. But like, I have, I'd say half to 3/4 of the show is kind of about this identity thing, and the other half, or 1/4, depending on what I mean, I haven't performed it again yet, so I don't know. But there's a lot of stuff about being a dad in there.
So do you think that the whole identity thing has changed for you since becoming a dad, or has influenced this? Because I've found for myself that having kids, all of a sudden you confront it with certain things that you never thought about before, and then you have a kid and you have to make a decision about the language that you're speaking with your child and all those kind of things. So do you feel like that being a dad has maybe influenced that?
No, not really, to be honest, not yet. Because I mean,
or maybe not yet.
Maybe not yet. I think potentially the thing that might come out of it is that I almost become more like the there's a part of the show where I'm kind of joking around the fact that French people, like, that I'm not English enough, or that I'm not French. I know that I can't be French. Sorry, I know that I'm not English enough because there's certain things that happen to me in my life that people, like, don't believe I'm English. An example is that I got cast in a film in France. It's like the Celine Dion biopic that's coming out later this year, and I'm playing a Quebecois, a Quebecer. Like, I'm not even English in the film. Do you know what I mean? And so I joke around about these different reasons why I'm feeling less and less English that I'm in France. So I feel like I almost have to overcompensate and be more English. When I'm on stage, I wear like a plaid blue and green shirt. I wear Doc Martin shoes on stage. I drive around Paris in a Mini with UK flags on the side mirrors. Like, I listen to Oasis like full blast. I feel like I overcompensate for the British, because I know that I feel like I'm not British enough, and I know I can't be French as well. And so I think with the baby, I think what will come out from that is I'll become even more British, like, because I'll want her to not, it's a difficult thing, because she's obviously growing up in France in the French school system right now with a French mum. Everything's in French. The only English she has in her life is me, and some like cartoons and stuff like that. But that's not going to be enough for her to have, like, to feel like she has some sort of British identity to her. So there's going to be that extra work as well that I have to do, that we have to figure out, like, how do I share British things with her that she's not going to find annoying? Like, how do I share TV shows with her when she's a teenager that maybe I used to watch, but maybe, like, legendary TV shows in the UK, so that when she goes to the UK, if she ever goes to live there, she doesn't feel completely out of the loop like I did when I moved to France.
I'm telling you, it's a full-time job doing that.
Oh yeah.
We've had that with 3. Now we have 3 cultures, because my kids basically had the 2 from birth, and then trying to maintain some level of connectedness to Germany while we were in the UK, which is not an easy thing, because the UK Brits don't necessarily appreciate you speaking German in the supermarket. I've had my moments there, and then moving to the States, and then you have the third one. So then it's then now we're both, like, my husband's trying to, we have like a standing order of Marmite coming delivered to the house, and and those kind of things. But we kind of made it work. You find your way of doing that, and showing them that they are connected. They have roots somewhere else.
Well, I think what's going to help is Harry Potter.
Oh my God.
That's going to help me. That's going to help me in my
what?
Britishness with my baby. And when she's old enough to get the Harry Potters in, it's happening straight away. You know, Harry Potter is England. All the James Bond, she's going to watch all of those. That's where it's going to be.
And Harry Potter, it's so nice. I mean, we only literally watched one of the movies a couple of weeks ago. And I mean,
nice.
My kids are teenagers, and that's their comfort go-to. But yeah, get the Stephen Fry audiobooks as soon as you can, and that's saved many a road trip. But also, you cannot. That's the culture, that's the language, that's everything you will get in those books, and they're just I can't. I mean, I'm excited for you that you've got that to look forward to.
Yeah.
Enjoy that, because that honestly will also make you feel more connected, I think. Are there any things that you really truly miss about British culture, that you really like? Yeah, that's such a thing that no one does in France, and I really miss it.
No, not really. It's not really a thing that I miss, but for some reason I get like emotional is not the right word, but there's certain things that happen where, like, I don't know, like it's maybe linked to my childhood or something. Like even the Euros just started. Or whatever it was, England had we had our first match yesterday, and there's just something about it, like seeing, like, because I watched it on the BBC and having like the four commentators on, who some of them were players when I was a kid for England. There's just something like nostalgic about it. There's some nostalgia. It's more it's not there's not things that I miss about England. It's more like nostalgia around certain things that happened when I was a kid there, or as a young adult, that I feel nostalgic about. Because when I go back there, there's not a lot of, I don't feel like I belong any more than I do here now. Like I feel like France is where I know more about France, and the way when people say to me like, oh, as a parent, like how do you get brought up in England? I don't know what parents do anymore. I don't know, because I don't know what brands of, I don't know anything about bringing up a kid in England, because I haven't done it. And so, there's a lot of life experiences that you have. I moved here when I was 22. So between 22 and 34, everything I've lived has been in France. So all of those like major decisions, like buying houses or buying an apartment or having kids or getting married, all that kind of stuff. I don't know what it's like in the UK, because I haven't done any of those things in the UK. I left the UK just after I finished university. So I have some of the basic things of like what it is to be an adult, paying your bills, renting houses. But that's changed in 12 years, like certain things have changed. So I feel like there's nothing, it's more nostalgia, as I said, the stuff that sometimes I miss, whether it's sporting stuff, whether it's certain TV shows that come on. It's more around that, I think. Or certain, like if I see a flavor of crisps or something, what did I have?
Food,
what did I have
related.
The other day? Where was I the other day? And I saw, there was like a specific brand of crisps or potato chips called Monster Munch. There was like a flavor called Flaming Hot. And I had them somewhere recently, like really recently, in the past couple. I know where it was. I was on my way to pick up my mum by car. She lives in Kent, and so, which is in the southeast of England. So you can drive from France, go on the tunnel, on the train that takes you under the water, and then you. So I was picking her up to bring her back here for a week for her birthday, basically. And at the Eurotunnel terminal, they had like English crisps. And I hadn't eaten them in about 20 years. And it just like, just that flavor just brought everything back. It'd be the same thing, I imagine, for you. Like if you have a certain German treat or sweet or something that it just brings you back all those years when you used to live there. So it's more nostalgic things.
It's little things and maybe the smell of something, or absolutely. But you said earlier, the whole living experience is just, you can't. I just wrote a blog post about that I would be terrified to move to Germany now if I had to, because I've been away from Germany for like 24 years, something like that. So I have no idea how to do all that renting apartments
Yeah.
and registering with a doctor and all that kind of thing. And I'd be terrified because I have no idea how to do it, but people would expect me to know because I'm
Yeah.
German, and
Because you're
because they would
German.
be like,
Yeah.
so then we'd have the whole, so you're German, but you're stupid, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Then it would go back the other way. Yeah.
I have to speak with an accent just so people, I'll be like, I'm not German.
Yeah.
And
Well, that's where, like, when people have asked me, like, oh, do you ever perform in England? I've never performed really. I performed my full show in England. But again, most of the people that come to that show are French expats. But I've not performed for an English audience. I don't really know what I would talk about. And I think the only angle that I would have is like, hey, I've been out of the country for 12 years. What have you done to the place? Do you know what I mean? Like I don't know. I don't recognize anything anymore when I go back. You know,
I could see that. I could see that.
Maybe it would just have to be things that made sense to them as well, you know? And because the audience would probably be, you know, obviously they'd be younger, but also if there's people in the audience that are my age and they remember things from like 20 years ago, you know, I don't have any specific examples of things. Like I have my what's the word? My, not rituals, but like my routines when I go back and visit my mum. Like I know the shops, like I go, you know, I do, like we always have a fish and chips, but I'm always disappointed by the fish and chips, you know, like because again, it's like this nostalgia thing of like, I remember, you know, late teenager just getting fish and chips, you know, in a thing with the salt and vinegar. And every time I go back to my mum's, I'm like, oh, I'll have some fish and chips. And it's just not good. It's not as good as it used to be. I don't know. There's just something, I think my palate's changed since, you know?
Yeah. It's so sad because then you feel like you've turned into this food snob.
Totally.
We've had similar experience. We actually moved back to the UK for a year, a few years ago, because I had it in my head that we needed to be back in Europe. And, obviously,
and then look what happened.
And then look what happened. Exactly. So yeah, it was like, oh my God, this place has changed so much. And we went to this Mexican place in Kent,
nice.
which is, it should be a warning. But we used to go when we lived there. We used to go, and it was a treat. And it was just like it's in this cute little pub, which also doesn't make any sense. But it was just that's what it was, and it was a treat. And we went. And we're like, well, like I said, we live in Texas now, and we
I was just
got our plates of food, and we're like,
if you come from Texas and it's like when me and my wife went to Japan for 2 weeks on holiday a few years ago, and then obviously we have sushi shop over here, you know, and when you come back, you're just like, yeah, no, this doesn't work. But then it's the only choice that you have. So then you get used to it again.
And you have to be careful because people sometimes don't take very kindly to you then criticizing things. So you have to be, and this is, I find that happens a lot where you're just like, because your experience is unique to, you know, in your circle of friends maybe, but you say that certain things, but they can come across as being patronizing or
totally.
And you have to be really careful. And then it's like, I can't share these things sometimes because people look at me funny. And so it's like sometimes you have this like there's like a blockage where like, oh yeah, I would say this now, but I can't.
Yeah. But England, your Mexican food is shit.
So when is because you're still in the middle of completing your tour, aren't you? And that's gonna take you further and further.
It'll take me until for now, if everything stays as it is currently right now, which probably isn't going to happen, but let's say it does, then the show ends in January. And between now and January, I've got about 20 different dates in Paris, but also around France. I think I've got a couple of dates. I've got a couple of dates outside of France in Europe. So Belgium, Geneva, and London. And so
I was just going to ask, are you in the UK as well? Because there are so many French expats in the UK as well who would.
Yeah, like they keep, you know, the statistic is that London is like the 5th biggest city in France because it's got more French people in London than there are in Bordeaux. Yeah. London's definitely. I'm doing London at the end of next month, so end of July, if everything goes to plan, and then normally the final show is in London as well at a bigger venue called the Shepherd's Bush O2. We're still working on confirming dates at the end of January, but that is the tentative plan, and I'm supposed to be probably filming it in Paris in October when I do my big show here at a place called Le Grand Rex, which is it's the biggest cinema in Europe.
That's exciting.
So it has 2,800 seats. So it's mainly a cinema, but it also does shows. So Madonna just before COVID, she did like a run of like 20 nights at this place.
Wow, that's so exciting.
So yeah, I'm excited about that, filming it and then getting it out on one of the streaming platforms.
Well, I can't wait to see more of your material. Keep doing what you're doing. I really like how it's kind of a subliminal learning, really.
Yeah.
Giving people an insight into each other's cultures
Mm-hmm.
in an indirect way.
Exactly.
And in a very entertaining way.
Yeah, it's going to be fun.
Well, Paul, we're coming to the end of our conversation, and I always like to conclude my chats with intercultural couples, when someone's married to someone from another country, with the same question. What if I asked your wife, what would she say is the most French thing about you? And don't say your accent, because that obviously doesn't count.
The fact that I complain a lot is probably what she would say. I complain. I mean, English people complain, but French people complain. Like French people, I mean, specifically Parisians, they complain so much. And so I feel like it's a specific type of complaining as well. It's not just like complaining. It's like the French word is râler. Râleur is the adjective of somebody who is a complainer. But yeah, it's a very French thing, complaining. So that's, but I've always had that. Like, so it's not something that
because you're British, and the Germans do that too. I think those three nations must be the biggest complainers of all. But
yeah, probably. If it was something specifically French that has happened to me while I've been here, it's probably the consumption of cheese, wine, and coffee. Because I hated those three things before I moved to France, and now I like all three of them. Just because it's you have to do it. Like if you can't not have a coffee. If like somebody's like, oh, let's meet for a coffee at 3 at the local bar or whatever, you can't order a pint. It's weird. Any other person's drinking a coffee, it doesn't feel right. So you get used to drinking coffee, even though the coffee's not great. At most cafes, it's not. I mean, compared to like Australians, Australian have got coffee down to a T. Even in Austin, I'm sure there's a million amazing coffee places. In France, there's a couple of them, but there's so many. But they're all expensive. Like you pay €4 for a good coffee, but then if you go to the local brasserie, it's like €1.50, and so that's what everyone has. So coffee and then cheese and wine just happened because I had dinners at French people's houses, and so I was obliged. I couldn't be like, yeah, I'd rather have a beer, please. It's rude. So I've gotten used to all three of those, and I like them a lot.
Very good. Thank you so much, Paul, for taking the time.
Been
that was a lot of fun.
Pleasure. Thanks so much.
Take care, Paul.
See you later. Bye.
Oof, that was my conversation with Paul. This was so much fun, and I'm guessing if you are a French speaker or a learner of French, you're already logged on to YouTube by now, aren't you? I can't wait to see more of Paul's comedy and possibly other projects too. So he told me afterwards that he did make some notes during our conversation and said that our conversation had given him some ideas for more jokes and possibly even a bigger project. So I'll definitely stay tuned. And Paul, if you're listening to this, don't forget to credit me. In fact, our conversation has made me even more aware of how very little everyday situations can provide excellent comedy material. It's, as expats, we get so many opportunities to look at things from different perspectives, and sometimes it's so obvious. But yeah, you forget unless you write things down. So make notes, people, because you never know, those notes might come in handy one day. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this episode as much as I did. And yeah, get onto YouTube. That's it from me for today. My next episode will be out once I'm back in Austin. For now, stay safe out there and see you next time.